This is Pat Metheny, American jazz guitarist and composer. If you're looking for one of the best jazz guitarists that plays contemporary jazz, Latin jazz, and jazz fusion, has 3 gold albums, 20 Grammy Awards, and the only person to have won Grammys in 10 different categories, you came to the right place. This video will examine the life and music of Pat Metheny. Welcome back to my channel. Patrick Bruce Metheny, born August 12, 1954, is an American jazz guitarist and composer. He was the leader of the Pat Metheny Group from 1977 to 2010 and continues to work in various small combo, duet, and solo settings, as well as other side projects. His style incorporates elements of progressive and contemporary jazz, Latin jazz, and jazz fusion. He has 3 gold albums and 20 Grammy Awards and is the only person to have won Grammys in 10 categories. Metheny was born in Lee's Summit, Missouri. His father, David, played trumpet, his mother, Lois, sang, and his maternal grandfather, Delmar, was a professional trumpeter. Metheny's first instrument was the trumpet, on which he was taught by his brother, Mike. Pat's brother, father, and grandfather played trios together at home. His parents were fans of Glenn Miller and swing music. They took Pat to concerts to hear Clark Terry and Doc Severinsen, but had little respect for guitar. Pat's interest in guitar increased around 1964 when he saw the Beatles perform on TV. For his 12th birthday, his parents allowed him to buy a guitar, which was a Gibson ES 140. Pat Metheny's life changed after hearing the album 4 and More by Miles Davis. Soon after, he was captivated by Wes Montgomery's album Smokin' at the Half Note, which was released in 1965. He cites the Beatles, Miles Davis, and Montgomery as having the biggest impact on his music. When he was 15, Metheny won a scholarship from Downbeat magazine for a 1-week jazz camp where he was mentored by guitarist Attila Zoller, who then invited him to New York City to meet guitarist Jim Hall and bassist Ron Carter. While playing at a club in Kansas City, Metheny was approached by Bill Lee, a dean at the University of Miami, and offered a scholarship. After less than a week of college, Metheny realized that playing guitar all day during his teens had left him unprepared for classes. He admitted this to Lee, who offered him a job to teach as a professor, as the school had recently introduced electric guitar as a course of study. He moved to Boston in the early 1970s to teach at Berklee College of Music under the supervision of jazz vibraphonist Gary Burton and established a reputation as a prodigy. He appeared on Burton's studio recordings from Ring in 1974 to Passengers in 1977. In 1974, he appeared on an album unofficially titled Jaco with pianist Paul Bley, bassist Jaco Pastorius, and Bruce Dittmans on Carol Goss's improvising artist label, but he was unaware that he was being recorded. The next year, he joined Gary Burton's band with guitarist Mick Goodrick. Metheny released his debut album, Bright Size Life, in 1976 with Jaco Pastorius on bass guitar and Bob Mosers on drums. His next album, Watercolors, in 1977 was recorded with Eberhard Weber on bass and Danny Gottlieb on drums and significantly marked Metheny's first outing with pianist Lyle, who would become his key collaborator in forming the Pat Metheny Group later that year. With Mark Egan on bass, the lineup was set for the group's self-titled debut album, Pat Metheny Group, in 1978. When Pat Metheny Group in 1978 was released, the group was a quartet comprising of Metheny, Danny Gottlieb on drums, Mark Egan on bass, and Lyle Mays on piano, auto harp, and synthesizer. All but Egan had played on Metheny's album Watercolors in 1977, recorded the year before. The second group album, American Garage, in 1979, reached #1 on the Billboard Jazz Chart and crossed over onto the pop charts. From 1982 to 1985, the Pat Metheny Group released Off Ramp in 1982, a live album, Travels, in 1983, First Circle in 1984, and The Falcon and the Snowman in 1985, a soundtrack album for the movie of the same name, for which they collaborated on the single This Is Not America with David Bowie. The song reached number 14 in the British Top 40 in 1985 and number 32 in the US. Off Ramp marked the first appearance of bassist Steve Rodby, replacing Egan, and a Brazilian guest artist, Nana Vasconcelos, on percussion and wordless vocals. On First Circle, Argentinian singer and multi-instrumentalist Pedro Aznar joined the group. As drummer, Paul Vertigo replaced Godley. Both Rodby and Vertigo were members of the Simon and Bard group at the same time and had played in Simon Bard in Chicago before joining Metheny. First Circle was Metheny's last album with ECM. He had been a key artist for the European record label, but left following disagreements with the label's founder, Manfred Eicher. Still Life in 1987 featured new group member trumpeter Mark Ledford, vocalist David Blamers, and percussionist Armando Marsal. Arnez returned for vocals and guitar on Letter from Home in 1989. With Metheny working on multiple projects, it was 4 years before the release of the next group record, a live album titled The Road to You in 1993. This release featured live versions of tracks from the two Geffen studio albums, as well as previously unreleased tunes. The group integrated new instrumentation and technology into its work, notably Mays' use of synthesizers. Metheny and Mays have referred to the next three Pat Metheny Group releases as a triptych. We Live Here in 1995, Quartet in 1996, and Imaginary Day in 1997. Moving away from the Brazilian-inspired styles, which had dominated the releases of the previous 10 years, these albums included experiments with hip-hop rhythms, sequenced synthetic drums, freeform improvisation on acoustic instruments, and symphonic signatures, blues, and sonata schemes. With Speaking of Now in 2002, new group members were added. Drummer Antonio Sanchez from Mexico City, Vietnamese-American trumpeter Quang Vu, and bassist, vocalist, guitarist, and percussionist Richard Bana from Cameroon. On The Way Up in 2005, harmonica player Grégoire Marais from Switzerland was introduced as a new group member, while Bona contributed as a guest musician. The album consisted of a single 68-minute long piece, split into 4 sections based on the 3-note motive, the opening B, A sharp, F sharp, and its later variation F sharp, A, B. Metheny has recorded albums under his solo artist billing regularly throughout his career. His solo acoustic guitar albums, including New Chatahuagua in 1979, One Quiet Night in 2003, and What's It All About in 2011. Building on the work of his experimental quartets, Metheny further explored fringes of the avant-garde on Zero Tolerance for Silence in 1994, a solo electric guitar outing. From the album Orchestron, Metheny handcrafted an array of elaborate custom mechanical instruments which allowed him to compose and perform as a one-person orchestra. By contrast, his album Secret Story in 1992 used lush orchestral arrangements usually found in movie soundtracks such as The Falcon and the Snowman and his own A Map of the World in 1999 film soundtrack. Recent solo build recordings include From This Place in 2020, recorded with a variety of guest artists, and the all-guitar collaboration Road to the Sun in 2021. In 2012, Metheny formed the Unity Band with Antonio Sanchez on drums, Ben Williams on bass, and Chris Botter on saxophone. This quartet released the album Unity Band in 2012 and toured Europe and the US during the latter half of the year. In 2013, as an extension of the Unity Band project, Metheny announced the formation of the Pat Metheny Unity Group with the addition of the Italian multi-instrumentalist Julio Carmassi. Outside the group, Metheny has shown different sides of his musical personality. An early duo billing with Lyle Mays, As Falls So Wichita Falls in 1981, includes Brazilian percussionist and vocalist Nana Vasconcelos for an elegant set noted for its atmospheric, long-form title track. In 1983, Metheny and Mays wrote music for the Steppenwolf Theater Company's production of Lyle Kessel's play Orphans. It has remained special optional music for production of the play around the world since. Metheny ventured into experimental jazz with the quartet release 8081 in 1980, Song X in 1986 with Ornette Coleman, and The Sign of Four with Derek Bailey in 1997. In 1997, Metheny recorded with bassist Mark Johnson on Johnson's release The Sound of Summer Running in 1998. The next year, he recorded a guitar duet with Jim Hall in 1999, whose work has strongly influenced Metheny's. He collaborated with Polish jazz and folk singer Anna Maria Jopek on Upojini in 2002 and Bruce Hornsby on Hot House in 2005. He has also played on albums with his older brother, Mike Metheny, a jazz trumpeter, among them Day In, Night Out in 1986 and Close Enough for Love 2001. I hope you enjoyed this video on one of my favorite jazz guitarists, Pat Metheny. If you've got an artist or band you'd like featured on this YouTube channel, pop it in the comments section. I'll make another video. Thanks for dropping by. Rock on.